except for the day we crossed the river to Illinois. It would have been illegal there. And, well, you know how that goes. I also finished my gunshot management class as of today. Let's just say running a successful gun store is a lot more involved than just selling a few guns. I've learned a whole lot. Amanda, how about you?
Well, I've not been shooting. I've been roofing. And let me tell you, I am not a roofer. And working on taking my radio show to live TV. Let me tell you, that too is a challenge. So right now, the radio show is live on TV on OpsLens, on Roku, Apple TV, and on the OpsLens app. And the other thing I've been doing is, it's a crazy, crazy world we're living in right now. I've been carrying, and I hope you are. Robyn, how about you?
I've been busy on the technology front. Unfortunately, I haven't been to the range, but I've been doing a lot of great virtual training courses online, setting them up for different customers and clients and the Girl in the Gun members to check out. So we've been doing a lot of virtual training and a lot of preparation for a lot more virtual online courses. And that's kind of been my world the past week, as I've been glued to my computer as usual, in technology hell to some extent, but it's been good and making a lot of progress. And this is my first time I get to say this. Yes. Charlie, what's new with you?
Thanks, Robyn. I actually took a friend and his son shooting yesterday, and I will tell you, young people can really blow through some ammo without respect to how much it costs. My friend had some American Eagle ammo that was probably, I'm going to say, 30 years old, maybe 40 years old, and it was just some 22s, which was pretty cool. And last week, I have been armed most of the days, except for a couple days I went down to New Jersey. I went down to New Jersey to film a few episodes of Riding Shotgun with Charlie, and I also filmed one in Connecticut this weekend. How about you, Paul and Susan?
Well, and before I get on to what's been going on with me, I want to say everybody should probably welcome Charlie. He's been on the show before, but this is the first time he's been on the show as a staff member. Charlie's going to be joining us from time to time, as often as his schedule allows and the openings we have allow. But we teased in the opening what happens to red shirts, and, you know, Charlie, as the new guy, you kind of are the red shirt here. And are you a Star Trek original series fan?
No.
Oh, okay.
Is this it? Am I out? Am I done? Like, my tenure was wonderful. Thank you.
No, but that's when the T-Rex eats you.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Great.
If we need a sacrificial crew member, we've got the name tag for you already. All right.
You are the first person to get beamed to the planet's surface, Charlie.
Right.
Oh,
and,
great.
You know, his name tag just says tasty, right?
As long as the aliens don't probe me, I think it'll be all right.
Wow. It did not take long for us to go off the rails this show.
Yeah, this is like 4 minutes in. Here we go. Nice job, Charlie.
All right. On my end, what's been up with me? Last week, I spent all week working in Washington at the Second Amendment Foundation headquarters outside of Seattle. And I tell you, it was an amazing week of work. I really enjoyed working from headquarters. I got to actually interact in person, and I've met everybody I work with. I'd met them before I ever came to work for SAF, but it's nice to be able to interact in person. I was able to get about a 1.5 hour private meeting with Alan Gottlieb, which, I mean, come on. That was dream category for me. And then Friday we did a live show with the Weekly Bullet. After we wrapped that show, I packed everything up into the old RAV4, and I made it from Friday afternoon home in less than 34 hours, and it was about a 1,600 drive, 1,600 miles.
Working in Washington.
So it was, it was Sunday was a day off. Let's put it that way. And we're back. It's a normal day. Let me go ahead and check here. We need to talk a little bit about the Self-Defense Radio Network before we go to work. Self-Defense Radio Network, of course, SDRN.us. It's our tag and our website is not loading in my browser software here, but our tag is all your favorite pro-freedom podcasts in one place. We currently have 14 podcasts on the network. More are to come. And 3 people that are on my staff tonight are on the network with their own shows. I'm, of course, referring to Amanda with Eye on the Target Radio, Rob with Self-Defense Gun Stories, and Charlie with the Riding Shotgun with Charlie podcast. So please do go check those out. Let's go ahead and go off to break. We've got our guests lined up, sitting there patiently waiting to go. We're going to be talking with Dean Reick of Buckeye Firearms, and we will get to that right after this.
This portion of the Polite Society podcast is brought to you by the Armed Citizens Legal Defense Network. If you carry a defensive handgun, you need protection from the aftermath of prosecution. Even if you do everything right, you can be the victim of an overzealous prosecutor or even be falsely accused. That is where the ACLDN comes in. They provide immediate assistance when you need it most. If you find yourself under arrest, they immediately pay bail money and the retainer for your attorney. Additional funds are available for trial and civil proceedings. Beyond the money, they have far and away the best team in the industry, providing you invaluable information and training DVDs that are included with your membership, and who stand ready to work with your lawyer on your defense. People like Masad Ayub, John Farnham, James Fleming, Tom Givens, Emmanuel Capelson, Dennis Tuller, and led by Network President Marty Hayes. Initial membership is only $135 for your first year, and you get 8 incredible training DVDs and other educational material when you join. If you don't have tens of thousands of dollars to defend yourself at your disposal right now, you need to be a member of the ACLDN. Go to armedcitizensnetwork.org and become a member today. And please mention that you heard about them on the Polite Society podcast.
All right, we are back. This is the Polite Society podcast presented by the Second Amendment Foundation. Joining us today, Dean Reick. Dean is with Buckeye Firearms Association. And Dean, the reason we brought you on, and this came to my attention last week, there are, and I wasn't aware, Ohio's legislature runs all year long. Most states, it's 4 or 5 months. You folks have a legislature that runs all year long, and you've got your legislature is going to be wrapping up here in the next couple weeks, and you've got some bills you're really looking on getting moved through before the legislature quits for the year, as well as 1 or 2 that you might not want to go forward, you might want to work against. First of all, could you talk about the, I'm going to call it a stand your ground, but I know that's not what you guys want to call it. Talk about what's going on with that.
Well, first of all, for our session, it's way worse than you're saying. It's actually 2 years. Our legislative session runs a full 2 years on the calendar. It started January 1st of last year, and it's finally going to wrap up December 31st at midnight. So, we've got just tons of bills, good ones and bad ones, and, probably most of those are going to die. And that's just the way it works here in Ohio. I've never seen this many gun bills before. It's been a crazy year in every way, and this year we're just going over the top. So, and we have an anti-gun bill by the governor that came out in the middle of last year, so we've been fighting that as well. So we've certainly been run through our paces with all of this pandemic stuff this year and all the anti-gun stuff that we were doing last year, against the governor.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to open this up to my staff because I need to get some tech work set up over here so we can get comments in. So, Amanda, you're Ohio.
Okay, I'll take it first. Dean, I want to tell you that a week ago I was on a Zoom call with the governor, and he didn't say
Oh,
what
no.
somebody else did was, well, what is, where can we focus? How can we focus? Because he is going to rerun. He's going to run again as governor. And so I point blank said that if you don't drop some of these anti-gun bills that you've got, you don't stand a prayer of being reelected. And let me say that I'm probably not his best friend any longer. Because he
Oh, no.
he kind of looked like he was sucking on a lemon, because there was like nobody else in this group that could do it, and people were like, "How could you say that?" And I'm like, "Well, what could they do? Fire me? They're not paying me now."
I've had meetings. I've had meetings just like that where I'm the only one in the room saying something they don't want to hear. So I feel for you, but take heart. That election is not for 2 years, so we don't have to deal with that. Beginning next year, but probably we'll be dealing with that in a year and a half when things start to really ramp up.
Oh yeah, there is that. So, do you actually think that the legislature is going to work the rest of the year, or is this week it? Because that's kind of the impression that I got. Then they're bonbons.
Yeah, it was supposed to end last week, but COVID hit the House, and a lot of things got shut down. So they're there this week, and it's really just hour by hour, what's happening. So, every time I sit down at my desk, I have no idea where we are because it's just crazy. As you know, it's lame duck. This happens at the end of every 2 years, and all the stuff that they've been wanting to do and never got done, it all happens in the last couple of weeks. So that's where we are. I'm hoping we're going to get to pass some good bills, but we're just going to have to see.
So which ones are you classifying as good versus bad?
Well, we have a duty to retreat bill. Actually, there are multiple duty to retreat bills trying to get that repealed. So I would consider those good bills. There's one on school weapons, which involves basically the FASTER program and all the other programs out there to try to improve school security, which is basically a Bloomberg effort. Bloomberg came into the state with lawyers and sued Madison City schools to try to prevent them from arming their teachers. They want to get a good decision. It's gone to the Supreme Court. We've been fighting that, but we don't want to leave it to a court. It's like in boxing, they say never leave it to the judges. Well, we don't want to leave it to the justices. So we have a bill out there, SB 317, which is supposed to clarify that local school boards can determine on their own what they want to do with school security. And that's what Bloomberg is trying to fight. So that's a good bill. We also have some other bills, the one on notifications. So if you're carrying, do you have to tell a police officer if you're pulled over, that sort of thing. We have one on civil immunity, and just a bunch of others. A lot of them are very small bills. We have a knife bill, we have other bills, but we're really trying to focus our fire on the school weapons and the duty to retreat right now, because even though it's lame duck and even though it's a little crazy right now, there's always the chance that these are going to get passed. And we've generated about 10,000 emails to the legislators just in the last few days. So we're certainly letting them know that we expect these to pass.
Great.
Dean, I had a question, if you can.
Sure, Rob. How you doing?
Hey, it's great to see you again. I've been reading some of the interviews that the governor's done, and he's been appearing with some, the newspaper, of course, calls them victims of gun violence, and therefore the governor goes, "Oh, I feel your pain. Yes, I'll push some gun control." But he's pushing bills that have absolutely no record of having worked anywhere else to stop gun violence. But that's not what the newspapers would lead you to believe. I mean, they're leading with emotion because that helps the newspapers sell advertisers. You have the harder job of trying to deal with facts. How are you getting those across?
Well, I mean, that's no different than it always is, right? I mean, editorial boards, for the most part, support gun control. They just don't quite understand it. Although I will say that in Ohio, we have a pretty good record dealing with the media, especially TV. A lot of them do get it, and we get a lot fairer treatment on local TV stations than we do in the newspapers. But, you're right. It's this whole thing. Ever since the Dayton shooting, which happened last year, and it was right after that the governor introduced his strong bill, which is SB 221, and it basically started with a press conference. And there were a lot of people there wanting him to do something, and they were chanting, do something, do something, do something. So shortly thereafter, the governor came out with a press conference and said, here are 17 things we're going to do. Well, some of those things, I guess a lot of people wouldn't care about one way or the other. But, some of them were pretty bad. It included some red flag provisions. It included a really unusual sort of a background check thing, which was supposed to be voluntary. But the way that it's written, it could be a mandatory, basically universal background check. And it has some other stuff in there that's not all that good, increasing penalties and so on. I got to tell you, it does not have support from Republicans. And surprisingly, it doesn't have a lot of support from Democrats either. Republicans think it goes too far. Democrats think it doesn't go far enough. So he's kind of hit the sweet spot. Doesn't have a lot of support.
Hated by all.
It's been, I'll just be honest with you, it's been sitting in committee. There have been no votes on that bill whatsoever. So, we're just days from ending this session. There's no way that bill, as it's written, is going to go through the House and go through the Senate and, go to the governor's desk to be signed. I think it's just not even possible now. Now, is it going to be reintroduced next year? I think it's almost certainly going to be reintroduced.
Gotcha.
In one form or another.
We're starting to get some really good questions in on social media. I want to bring one of them in. Diane on Facebook asked, how much will this bill be amended for Stand Your Ground? I'm not. That comment did come in. That comment came in 2 minutes ago. So.
It depends on which. I think there are 3 separate bills now for Stand Your Ground.
Okay.
One of them has a whole bunch of stuff in it. Then there's one in the House and another in the Senate that are pretty clean, straightforward duty to retreat bills. So I'm not sure which one they're talking about. The ones that are on the move right now are, and I'm going to read this, SB 383 and HB 796. They're identical bills. They were introduced in both the House and the Senate at the same time. The idea being to try to fast track it so that you can get it running through both chambers simultaneously, and within days, hours, we might see it voted on. I will tell you that one of the bills has been passed in a Senate committee, so it's ready to go to the Senate floor. The other one is still in committee in the House, so it still has a ways to go. There's a lot of work to do on those, but anything can happen in lame duck. So we're still pushing.
So, Dean, I've got a question for you about arming the teachers and firearms in schools. I do remember reading in the last couple months that teachers, one of the things they were pushing for in Ohio was that teachers had to do 700 hours of training, which is the same amount that the police have. And first, I want to know if that is true. And second of all, if it is true and the teachers put in 700 hours of training, do they get to carry badges and do they get to arrest kids?
Well, that's not what the law says, and that's what the lawsuit is over. Because basically, it's the Bloomberg people came in, and they were trying to claim, well, you can't arm teachers unless you have the same training that police officers go through. But 700 hours, that's crazy. And what does most of that involve? That's like, how do you drive a police car? How do you fill out reports? How do you arrest somebody? How do you do all this stuff that cops do? That's not what the teachers are doing. They're being trained to stop an active killer. It's very straightforward. The FASTER program does about 28, 30 hours of training, and it focuses exclusively on that. Bad guy in the school, stop the bad guy. That's it. So that's not what the law says. It's in the Supreme Court right now. We're hoping to get a good decision, but we're also working the legislature for them to confirm it. And we have a letter from the governor from back when we were first dealing with this, and he confirmed, look, the Ohio law says that localities can determine on their own what kind of security you have in schools. So this whole 700-hour thing is just a lie. That's all coming from the Bloomberg folks, and it would make it impossible. Nobody's going to go through that much training. And it would basically just shut down that kind of security across the state, which is exactly what they want. They want to get a good ruling for them and then make that a precedent and then shut it all down.
Well, speaking as somebody who I've interviewed several law enforcement officers, and the shooting portion of their training is not 700 hours. It's closer to 50 hours over the course of their entire training.
Well, I mean, we've talked to police officers. It's the APATA program here in Ohio, and when you graduate from police school, police college, right? You basically have little to none of the training that FASTER and other programs provide. You're not trained very much at all in active shooters. That's the kind of stuff that you do additional training for. So again, this whole 700-hour thing is just nuts. Makes no sense. We have armed teachers. We have 88 counties in Ohio. We have armed teachers. Probably, I'm thinking like in 78 of those counties. I mean, it's pretty extensive. It's been working really well. So, why fix it if it ain't broke? But, that's not the objective of Bloomberg. They just don't like it. I think that their thinking is, this is like Joe Camel, right? You get your foot in the door, and oh my, the teachers, the administrators, the students, they're going to see that, guns can actually do good stuff. And we don't want anybody thinking that. So get the guns out of the schools. So it's purely political, has nothing to do with safety whatsoever. It's really disgusting. So we're hoping for the legislative fix. We're hoping for a good court decision and just shut this whole thing down so that we don't have to deal with this nonsense anymore.
Dean, I'm actually frightened by it because the thought of putting up a big sign that says, "Hi, my children are not protected," is terrifying.
Well,
we've seen what
that's what they
in the
do.
past.
Yeah, that's what they do. There are some schools that will, put up these no gun signs, which, I agree with you. It's like an invitation. But we have some schools too that put out different kind of signs, and they'll put out a sign that says, our teachers and our staff are armed. Basically a beware sign, and you're not probably going to see a shooting in one of those schools. So it really just depends on how pragmatic you are, and it's the old rural versus urban divide. Most of the rural schools, they deal with the guns. They're comfortable with that. In these very urban schools, they're scared of guns. So, that you tend to get a lot more acceptance in the rural areas. Fortunately, Ohio, like a lot of states, is mostly rural. So, a lot of these districts, they're, even the ones who rejected this idea at first, they've come back and they've said, you know what, maybe that's not such a bad idea. And a lot of them won't announce publicly that that's what they're doing, which, makes sense from a certain standpoint.
I want to bring up one thing. We've got to go to break here real quick, and Dean, I'm hoping you'll hang out with us for another segment. We've had both YouTube and Facebook are just blowing up with comments, and I've put a few of them through, but like one that just rolled through suggested, just because you comment doesn't mean your comment's going to make it to the air. We've got a lot of 12 and 13-year-olds that are out there on YouTube specifically, and no, I'm not putting that on the air. Good, nice try. But if you do comment, if you do have an interesting comment or question, go ahead and comment on either the Facebook or YouTube videos. I'm watching the feed. I'll get your comments on the air. But right now, we do have to step aside to break. We're going to hear from the Concealment Solutions folks. And we'll be back with one more segment with Dean right after this.
This portion of the Polite Society podcast is brought to you by Concealment Solutions. Jason Christensen makes the most comfortable inside the waistband holster on the market, bar none. The Black Mamba. Some of the other products offered are the Sidewinder outside the waistband holster and Python gun belts. Every product that Concealment Solutions makes has unsurpassed craftsmanship that shows in the fit and finish of the product. Visit concealmentsolutions.com to view all of the products available, and you can get 10% off your order when you enter the promo code POLITICS in the promo code box at checkout. That's concealmentsolutions.com.
All right, we are back. This is the Polite Society podcast presented by the Second Amendment Foundation. I'm going to go ahead and hand this over back to my staff as I watch the feed and looking for good questions and comments. Go ahead, folks.
I just want to
Dean,
toss
I have a
out there
question.
John, 1 second, and then
Go ahead, Amanda.
I just want to toss out there that one of the comments that went scrolling by was the fact that the Republicans haven't solved the ammo shortage. When we're done with Dean and we go to the group conversation, we're going to address that.
Yes, we are.
So, okay, I just want to go on record. John, go ahead.
Dean, you've mentioned that this is basically a lame duck session. How much turnover is there going to be from this legislature to the one that starts in 2021?
Oh, that's a really good question, and I should have been prepared with an answer. I'm not really sure what the numbers are, but, we're going to have a lot of legislators who are saying goodbye and other ones coming in. The governor, this was not a gubernatorial election, so the governor is going to stick around another 2 years. So we're going to have the same administration, but we're going to have some shuffling in the seats. I wish I had the answer for you. I just don't have the numbers on that.
The interesting
Did
thing
you pick up
there,
any
John,
more Republicans?
Oh, yeah.
Pardon me?
So the interesting thing is that people are term limited out. And so we end up with a rotation in Ohio because of term limits for that. And we did have a pretty big red wave in Ohio, and Buckeye had a lot to do with it. So, Dean, take it away from there.
Yeah, well, we had a lot of our endorsements, and the vast majority of our endorsees won. I forget what the final statistic was, but it was really close to about 90% of our endorsees won their elections. So that's really good. All of those, we do a lot of work when we're grading and endorsing candidates, and it's just horrendous the amount of work that's in there, because we're dealing with hundreds of candidates all over the state, and so our record this year was pretty good, and we're not just grading them. We're not keyboard warriors. Okay, we're actually out there helping the candidates get elected. I probably did more email blasts this year than I've ever done before. Just hundreds of thousands of emails going out, very targeted emails, going out to voting districts around Ohio, bringing people to fundraisers, making sure that people got to the polls. We worked with the NRA on voter registration from last year, which was the big thing with the Trump campaign and Republicans in general. We were pushing that. We even did a lot of in-person events for training, because a lot of what goes on behind the scenes are people using phone apps where they can make person-to-person calls to get out the vote, texting, and just all that kind of stuff. So, we were doing these training sessions all over the state, and, had hundreds of volunteers out there. So, that's the kind of thing that really makes a difference, and that's really, I'm just going to be straight with you, it's hard to get gun guys to do that. On the left, they love that kind of stuff. They love calling people. They love going to marches and all this kind of stuff. Gun folks, it's like, just leave me the hell alone. They don't want to do that kind of stuff. But we were pretty fortunate. We had about 150 to 200 volunteers who were working with the NRA and with the Republican Party in Ohio. and they were making these phone calls, and the get out the vote effort, I think, was pretty solid in Ohio.
Let's hope the legislators remember who put them there.
Well, we'll remind them.
Yeah.
Good point, Dean, because they need to be reminded. Dean, one thing I noticed from my experience with Faster, and yours is far larger than mine, school administrators are communicators. If they wanted their staff disarmed, they could do it tomorrow because they're one of the local people who have to approve any applicant that wants to carry in their school. So if a local school administrator wants to stop it, it can be done tomorrow, which makes me think that they're not driving this. Otherwise, those 82 counties wouldn't be having armed teachers in their schools. But it sounds like school administrators might have to speak up if they want to be able to continue to defend their students and staff.
Well, Rob, that's a really good point. That you're right. You're absolutely right. That's not where the pushback is coming from. It's just like with most other things when it comes to gun control. It's not a grassroots effort. It tends to come from the top down. Now, when I say that Bloomberg came into the state, I mean that literally. Bloomberg has lawyers. If you look at the lawsuits, Bloomberg lawyers are listed on those lawsuits, and they're providing that free legal counsel to help some of these cities launch these lawsuits. And this was very specifically a Bloomberg thing. Bloomberg's been in Ohio for years. We've been warning people. A lot of people really aren't aware of it, but we've been dealing this for at least a decade, and so this is not unusual. But we've got to push back in the courts. We've got to push back at the polling stations, and it's possible next year they're going to run, on the ballot, a ballot issue. And, of course, in Ohio, the thing we really have to protect is preemption, which basically, preemption is not a legal term. That's what we call it. It's basically the gun rules are at the state level, not at the city level.
Right.
And they're really wanting to push that. Ohio has just shy of 2,300 cities, villages, and townships. And you can just imagine the chaos. Everything that we've done for the last 15 years would be wiped away if we lost preemption. If any city out there could pass whatever law they want, we'd all be lawbreakers at one point or another unless we just stayed in our house. Because there'd be no telling, whether you just be whack-a-mole all over the state with lawsuits and trying to change laws and everything else. So, there are even a lot of liberals who just don't like that idea because it would really seriously be chaos. Just like it was before we came along and before we passed the law that created preemption here in Ohio. So, we've got to watch our six on all of this stuff because Bloomberg and gun control folks are coming at us from every direction.
Well, it seems to me it's lawfare, using the courts to achieve a political end that they can't get through the legislature, and they're doing it in a way that is so expensive that only billionaires like Bloomberg can fund those sorts of efforts. Costs you a lot to defend and try and stop them.
Well, Rob, let me give you a nightmare scenario. This is something I've been talking to people about. I don't wish anybody ill at all, but Bloomberg's getting up there in age. He's a very, very rich billionaire. I mean, he's a big billionaire. What do you think is going to be in his will? Where do you think a lot of his billions are going to go? He could give $10 billion to every town for gun safety, which could fund them for the next 100 years. And they could just do anything they want. And it's just going to be catastrophic. So, he's obviously somebody who's willing to put his money where his mouth is and waste a lot of money because he spent millions and millions of dollars in this last election, had nothing to show for it. That's not unusual, but it causes a lot of problems. And you're right about these lawsuits because, we sued the city of Cincinnati. We sued Columbus. We've been involved in the Madison case. We're a small to medium-sized organization. That's really expensive for us to do. So, if somebody came at us with $1 million that they could put into a lawsuit. I mean, good Lord, that'd be really hard for us to fight.
Gotcha. Thank you, Dean. Well, you're okay. Let's look at the other way. You just had a red wave roll through Ohio, and that was a battle won by an army of Davids. A bunch of guys who said, I have a cell phone. I'm going to pick it up and call my neighbors. And that was enough to stop Bloomberg's millions that he spent in the state. We've seen that, fortunately, all across the country. Bloomberg dropped tens of millions in Texas and got rocked back on his heels. But only because some people decided to get off the bench and get in the fight.
Yeah. The interesting thing is I think a lot of people pay attention to the presidential election, and that's the thing that the media likes to report on, and they're not reporting on everything else. Republicans hold on to a majority of the governorships across the country. You saw a lot of Democrats being thrown out, Republicans coming in. I mean, it was just all over the country this way. People think about the presidency in a very different way. And I've tried to talk to people about this. It's like, Trump lost for lots of different reasons. It looks like that's the way it's going to all turn out. It's not finalized yet. But when you get down to a local level, it's a very different kind of politics. And this still is a center-right country. For all the talk about the country, leaning left, and for this big blue wave that's supposed to roll through and all that, when it comes to the way people actually live their lives day to day, most people are still relatively conservative. So I think we're lucky in that respect that, we are truly grassroots. Our efforts come from the bottom up, and the gun control efforts come from the top down. It's all smoke and mirrors. They don't have the kind of broad support. If you look at who's actually doing the gun control stuff, it's the same people showing up all the time, regardless of what the issue is. It's just sort of all-purpose, generic people on the left that show up for any issue. With us, if it's a gun issue, it's going to be gun guys showing up almost exclusively. So it's a weird kind of calculation, but and sometimes it works for us, sometimes it works against us. But I think you can see the power of the grassroots, with this red wave that we saw.
Okay, I'm going to paraphrase two different posts that just came by. One of them was talking about celebrating the ground that you've gained, or we've all gained, and holding that ground. And the second one is, how do we stop the gun grabbers? And so, Dean, you want to address either one of those? I mean, I personally think that it's these state organizations. And when people ask me, it's you need to put your money where your mouth is, and that is join the NRA, join SAF, and join your state organization. And that's who's going to stop what's happening and what they're trying to do. But Dean, let me toss that to you.
We've actually done pretty well. We've lost virtually no ground at all for 15 years. It does tend to be incremental. It takes a long time to get something passed, and it's step by step. A lot of people want huge things passed all at once. It's like all or nothing. In Ohio, it just doesn't work that way. But we've not lost any ground ever since we got concealed carry passed. Around 15 years ago or so, it's been all positive for us. And you would think at some point that the gun grabbers would look at this and start to admit, all of this actually works. People can carry, people can own guns. It's not blood in the streets, but every time a bill comes up, it's the same thing, like with duty to retreat. There's, the old line is, if we pass duty to retreat laws, get rid of duty to retreat, it's going to be blood in the streets. People are going to be just gunning each other down right and left. It's going to be the apocalypse. The four horsemen are going to ride, dogs and cats living together. But what are you going to do? I mean, that's the only argument they have. It's never correct. It never happens. So, I mean, it's like the same fight that we have over and over again, but it's one step at a time. Fortunately, we haven't had a lot of back steps. So, I mean, I appreciate that comment. We've gained a lot of ground. It's been slow going, but we really haven't lost any. There's a lot more talk out there than action as far as gun control is concerned.
We are coming up.
Ohio passed their concealed carry in April of 2004, and they've modified it 2007, 2008, 2011, 2013. So what you're saying is they just kept, and every time they've made it better. And so that's, once you get past the first struggle, that's really attributable.
And that's always been, you're right, and that's always been the strategy is, a lot of people want these Christmas tree bills, let's get everything all at once. But that gives you, like, if you've got a bill with a dozen things in it, then that's a dozen arguments you have to make. It's usually better, we've found, to pass a good, clean bill, get the basic thing passed, then you can come back and you can clean it up. If we had demanded all or nothing 15, 16 years ago, we still wouldn't be carrying in Ohio.
So, get nothing.
This is hard work. This is really hard work, and you just have to stick it out. You've got to be patient. And, if we could pass more, we'd pass more. We're doing the best we can to pass everything we possibly can.
Well, Dean, we are coming up on the end of the time we have for you today. But one thing we talked about earlier was I want you to let people know, and it's really easy because I already got the answer to it. If people want to know more, especially people in Ohio, how they can become more effective, how do they do it?
Oh, well, you go to BuckeyeFirearms.org. That's how you do it. Sign up for our free newsletter. BFAnews.org, BFAnews.org. It's a free newsletter. Comes out every Tuesday morning. We've been publishing that newsletter for over 15 years. We report on everything that's going on. We report on bills. We have national news, self-defense, just hunting and everything else. We actually do a lot more than people think we do. Helping the ranges to get upgraded around Ohio, working on hunting issues and everything else. So get our free newsletter. We'll keep you informed. BFAnews.org.
Very cool. Well, we do need to step aside to break. Dean, thank you so much for joining us today, man.
Oh, it was a pleasure.
All right, folks, we've got our news segment to come. We'll get to that right after this. This portion of the Polite Society podcast is brought to you by The Complete Combatant. The Complete Combatant is designed for a broad base of citizens that range from students that don't own a gun on up to advanced students that train often. The Complete Combatant offers several different courses that build upon each other, from avoidance, using verbal commands, and preparing for contact, lethal versus non-lethal decisions, your 911 call, interacting with the police, to even dealing with the legal system in the aftermath. The Complete Combatant courses are a layered approach for all levels of experience that will walk you through all the many stages of decisions while developing a game plan tailored to your skills and your everyday carry. Please visit www.thecompletecombatant.com and make sure you mention this ad to receive 15% off. Again, that's www.thecompletecombatant.com and mention the ad for 15% off. All right, we are back. This is the news segment of the Polite Society podcast presented by the Second Amendment Foundation. Amanda, we had a comment come through, and I, for everybody who doesn't, you ought to listen to Amanda's radio show, Eye on the Target Radio. And there was a comment about, or there was a discussion about this yesterday on your show. Why can't the Republicans just make more ammo happen?
Oh my, yeah, that would be exactly it. So it's an interesting thing because I was just involved in a Facebook group where somebody said, and I'm not making fun of them, but they were like, I know we can't buy ammo, so why don't we just start our own ammo manufacturing company? Sounds good in concept, but do a little digging and find out why is there no ammo. There's no ammo because there's no raw materials. Why is there no raw materials? Because we don't manufacture it in the United States. Why don't we manufacture it in the United States? Because the United States really frowns on it when we blow up our own employees, right? We'll start there. And I'm going to toss this back to the group. But it really is that there's very few primers manufactured in the United States. Most of them are imported. It's very small amounts. I don't think any powder is manufactured in the United States. I think most of it is in Australia. We do not smelt any more lead in the United States. So we will melt it and reconfigure it, but we don't smelt it. So all of the raw materials are outside of the United States, or most of them. And then, so you take that, put that in one bucket, stop the supply stream because we stopped the boats from coming in for months. So now all of a sudden you don't have any raw materials or supplies. Then we scare the bejeebers out of people and we cause them to buy millions of guns more a month than they had been buying. And when they buy guns, they buy ammo. So now we've increased the demand. And then with Americans, as soon as you see the shelf, that it is empty. If you go to buy a box of ammo and when you go there, it's empty, the next time you go and there is 2 boxes or 4 boxes, what do you buy? As
4
many
boxes.
of them as you can get, because it was empty the last time. So all of a sudden, you become the mini hoarder. And so it just starts to clear out the shelves. And so all of that ties together. But it is a shortage of raw materials that had really started this. And I think we're going to see a reverberating wave for a while. And it has nothing to do with Republicans. It may have something to do with Democrats because with this political climate that we're in, the conservatives with guns are all like, well, we're going to need some more ammo. So they're now going to the shelf to also buy ammo. So it just is playing one on top of another on top of another. Is that?
It's interesting you mentioned. I was going to say it's interesting you mentioned the lead smelting because when I go to St. Louis, I go through Herculaneum, which was the location of the only lead ore smelting facility in the U.S. and they closed that in 2013.
I remember them doing it.
Yeah. So the EPA has pushed so much stuff out of the United States. Yep. Rob?
Now, we still make technical explosives in this country. Believe me, we do. And we export them. But in particular, EPA and OSHA drove ammo manufacturers to China, to Mexico, and offshore. It is slightly more polluting to convert lead ore to lead rather than just remelt it. Okay. We used to do it. We can do it. Here's how a friend described it to me when he moved his company out of the United States. He said, I can work by a set of rules. In other countries, I agree with the government. Here are the rules under which I'll operate my plant, and I'll design it to do that. In the United States, the rules are contradictory. So here I have to plan to pay fines, and I merely configure my company to pay the fewest fines possible. Often, that's more expensive than working offshore.
I don't
agree with that. Charlie?
I just wanted to say I had a couple. One of my non-gun friends. He was talking about ammo, and he said, he's got friends that can't find it anywhere, and he's like, yeah, the ammo companies are just holding ammo back, and all this sort of stuff. And I'm like, yeah, that's just it's just ridiculousness. They're charging more money. They're sticking it to us. I mean, his evidence is nothing. And I did say, hey, listen, companies can't get all the materials that they need, so they're not really. I don't want to say the company's just not sticking it to us, but it all comes to me. It's 6th grade economics. It's supply and demand. If we can't get the materials, then that's going to cost more to get the stuff that we have. And when it's all plentiful, it's going to cost less.
There was a really good comment that just came through on YouTube. Gun Websites, hey Pete, said lead and copper ammo is so old tech. Looking forward to new projectile material and advancements. And while I agree with that on principle, that takes a long time to happen. It's not like the old. You can't go back in the old garage and mix up some new alloys and boom, the problem's fixed. And I don't know much that's going to replace gunpowder.
Yeah, but I think Pete's right on the projectiles and technology. I mean, the rising price drives American ingenuity, and people will figure out new and unique things. And so we will see some of that. And let me tell you, rising prices, I got a banner from somebody today that came in my email that said 9mm range ammo at 84 cents a piece. I'm like, I will wear those as earrings. I'm just looking at that going, wowza. But I think that we just need to understand the issue. One of the issues is people are like, well, they ought to make price gouging illegal. And then they put out these names of companies and they price gouge. Well, no, 84 cents is the going rate because you can't get it. They know they can't resupply it. They know they can't. So it is supply and demand. Do you actually believe in the American free market and you buy or you don't buy? Or do you believe in legislation to set a price and then we become the communists because the price is the price is the price, whatever that is? So even though I don't like 84 cents, it's my choice as to whether I spend it or I don't. And that's what the free market is about.
Well, it's 84 cents and we can get some, or price controls, and there isn't any.
Yeah. Gun Websites says, I agree, but with 3D printers, mills, and scarcity, we will see new stuff, BBs with magnets or air. And you know what? Air is not a new technology. There have been air guns around for, I want to say, 100+ years.
Lewis
and Clark had an air gun with them.
Right.
They used to kill buffaloes with that air gun, right?
Right.
That's a lot of air.
Yeah. And one other thing, air guns now, especially anybody that's been to SHOT Show or is really into the hardware side. I myself mostly concentrate on the gun right side, but anybody that's really into the hardware side knows they make air guns that are absolutely fine for hunting and will take down moderate-sized game without a problem. And, yeah.
I believe that they say that it will take down game that will eat you. So, because that's where I draw the line: the game that I eat and the game that eats me. And where do I need my bullets to be? Right?
You know what? We got 2 minutes left of this segment. We really need to mention some of the news stories that happen, and one that I know, John Richardson, you wanted to talk about, and I'm going to tee you up on it. Tell us about Jim Shepard getting the recognition.
Yeah, Jim Shepard, who was actually one of the co-founders of CNN back in the day, runs the Outdoor Wires, and SAF honored him with their Global Leadership Award for 2020. I think he's quite deserving of it. I get the Outdoor Wires, various wires, on a daily basis, and they're very helpful. So I think the other thing that we need to mention is the ATF raid of Polymer 80.
Yes.
And they have actually gone to some consumers who bought the buy build kits.
Yeah.
Buy build shoot kits, and said, you could either give it to us or we could get a warrant and raid your house and kill your dog, et cetera, et cetera.
Let's talk on that for just 1 second. Because I had Pincus on my show last night, Rob Pincus, for the rest of you who don't know shortcut terms. So Rob Pincus from the Personal Defense Network, and as I was quoting you, John, and quoting your blog, wait, no lawyers, only guns and money, only guns and money. I have to do the whole line. So only guns and money blog. And as I was quoting it, Rob is saying that so far there has been only one report, and so the two news source kind of things. Have we heard any more? Has there been more reports come out, or is this one of those watch this space and see what happens? Because I am so flipped out by that I really want to know. I can't say.
You want to know for sure.
I have not. Yeah, I haven't heard others, but then again, I haven't looked at any of the news today.
Okay.
It will be fascinating later when Freedom of Information Acts come through, and you'll say, okay, who approved this raid? Who demanded this raid in ATF? Yeah, we can get some names.
Well, the interesting part is the leader of the ATF is a temporary assigned leader. There is the director was never voted in, so we've nominated a conservative but was never voted in, and so we have an extreme liberal that is quasi anti-gun leading the ATF, which is a absolute joy to all of us. John, you want any comment on that? Because you've been doing the work.
Yeah, Regina Lombardo, and then the number 2 person. I think they're really going to be going after 80% lowers. They're saying it's a crime problem. Doubtful. They were the ones who classified 80% lowers, not you and me. And the other one that I think we're going to really see them ramping up against is going to be pistol braces. And whether or not an AR pistol, with or without a brace, if it weighs more than a certain, if it weighs more than, let's say, 50 ounces, they're going to call it any other weapon or a short-barreled rifle and classify it under the National Firearms Act. The basic.
Did we want to try and talk about Shepard, or are we done with him?
We're kind of done.
Okay.
I mean, when you write a law and people figure out how the law works and then they design something around it, it's because you didn't write the law or the regulation right.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, we are
it's
currently.
Really hard, though,
Go ahead.
It's really hard though to put all the horses back in the barn and try to catch them all. I mean, and that's really what they're trying to do again. Is we've been free ranging it on this design for a while, and so Warsaw Patriot says he contacted Gun Owners of America on this issue, and they're on it. There's several organizations on it, and
my boss is on it. I'll guarantee you.
Yeah, so they have defined firearms for a long while by weight, and if it didn't meet a criteria, it didn't get imported, or it didn't get manufactured, or it didn't get. So actually, the James Bond. Was it? Yeah, the double. Wait, what did he carry? The little
Walther PPK.
The PPK. That's why we ended up with the PPK-S, because they had to make it. They had to make it heavier to be able to import it into the United States.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Well, we are currently 4 minutes over on this segment. So, I know, but we've got more show. I'm trying to fit 10 pounds into a 5-pound bag here.
Information.
Yes.
It's called information.
Yes. So what we really do need to do, we're going to go ahead and step aside to break. When we come back, we've got our DGU segment, and we'll be back with that right after this.
In 1928, Germany required its citizens to register their firearms, making possible Hitler's 1938 Nazi Weapons Act, disarming all Jews. Now ask yourself, what is the real consequence of registration? All in favor of gun control, raise your right hand. Brought to you by Jews for the Preservation of Firearms Ownership, America's aggressive civil rights organization. jpfo.org.
All right, welcome back. This is the Defensive Gun Use segment of the Polite Society podcast presented by the Second Amendment Foundation. These discussions are not legal advice. Some of us are trainers, but this is not formal training, and you need formal training. The Defensive Gun Use segment is intended as information, not as training. As always, the opinions of the hosts are only their own opinions and not those of any sponsors or other affiliations. Or in the case of Rob, if he gives his opinion, it's not necessarily even mine. So, there we go. Let's go ahead and do the first one. And I'm really, because we've, inside baseball, to people listening on podcast, we moved the live feed from the Polite Society podcast Facebook page and the Polite Society podcast YouTube channel to the Second Amendment Foundation Facebook page, which has got over 500,000 likes, and to the YouTube channel, which has got oodles more subscribers. Our comments are through the roof. I'm really looking forward to see what the commenters say about the DGU segment, because I'm betting there's a whole bunch of them out there that haven't heard one yet. So, Rob, I think if you don't mind, I'm going to tee you up, and you're going to take Wichita Falls because I said so.
And because no one else wants to take a whack at the Spanish names. Here we go. How many times have we said it? Do not bring a knife to a gunfight. Of course, if you're a multiple-time loser, like the suspect in this defensive gun use, you are not the sharpest tool in the shed. The victim showed up for work in the Carnicita Los Cuatas on a Tuesday morning. The perpetrator, though, was standing in the alley at the back of the store. The victim told this obvious criminal that he'd have to leave. Now, instead of following directions, the perpetrator attacks the victim. The criminal tried to punch our good guy, and instead got punched a couple times in return. Self-defense. Proportional threat. Then the attacker pulls a knife from his pocket, and our victim, who asked him to leave, drew his gun from his holster. End of story. No shots fired. He held the attacker at gunpoint until the police arrived. Officers reviewed security footage and determined that, yes, it matched the victim's story. He will not face charges for acting and using a firearm in self-defense, which he did even though no shots were fired. The 41-year-old multiple-time criminal had a lengthy history and also was still out on the streets, showing that the criminal justice system is broken. I think it's now giving him break number 23, and this would be break number 24, unless the guy goes to jail for some serious time. Anyone have some comments?
Well, I'm going to jump in first. Good on the guy. I mean, one of the big things we say here is pogo, pants on, gun on. And our victim here was carrying at the time. I want to make one more comment about holding people at gunpoint. That is something that is a little bit advanced. It's not like you see in the movies where it's really easy to come out and hold your arms straight out with a gun in it that's got some weight to it for 20 minutes while the police show up. I mean, 2 or 3 minutes? Yeah, anybody can do that. Hold it for 20. That's a bit of an advanced maneuver, and I would recommend anybody take training that includes instruction on how to effectively hold people at gunpoint.
Paul, to use up some of your valuable time here, I think you need the truck driver app so that with this gun at full arms extension, how about low ready so you don't inadvertently do something terribly dangerous, you need to say, hey, whatever it is, automatic dialer, call the police for me because you're out of hands.
Well, absolutely. Now, I do know that, and I'm not going to say her name, or she's going to answer me. You can say Amazon device or other device. Dial 911, and they will.
Right.
Yeah.
Wiretap is what I think they call those, right? Hey, wiretap.
Yes, right.
Yes.
KGB bug.
Yes.
I think what I like about the story is that the video corroborated the story of the gun owner, which is what you want to have. And of course, when God forbid you ever end up having to use a gun, you want to be the first one to call the police because you get to be the victim. Mm-hmm. And if the knife man or the person with a knife ended up calling the police first, his story would certainly be different. It wouldn't be anything about I pulled a knife on this guy. It would have been, holy moly, this guy pulled a gun on me. And then they have the video to prove that story wrong. But I think it's good to note that it's important to be the first one to call the police so you can be the victim.
Yep.
Robyn,
and anyone that has 2 kids or siblings knows that this is what you need to do. You need to be the first one to tell mom and dad, and the other person gets to be the aggressor.
Robyn, you've been very quiet tonight. Any thoughts on this one?
Well, I think how Rob pointed out, just to make sure that everything is equitable in terms of use of force, what's appropriate. Using your words is the appropriate first step, and then using your fists is the next appropriate first step. And then when a knife is presented, obviously things are become aggravated. So just knowing the laws of use of force is really important in these situations to make sure that you're acting appropriately.
Absolutely. All right, John, you got our next one. Looks like it's out of Albuquerque.
That's right, out of New Mexico. It is Edge with Weapon Night on the Polite Society podcast. It was supposed to be a routine trip to the ATM for a man and his family. Whereas Rob says, "Are you armed when you go to the ATM?" The man got out of his vehicle to conduct business at a walk-up ATM when he was attacked by a 31-year-old man. The attacker was wielding a machete and went after him as he walked back to his car. Fortunately, the father was armed and shot the attacker 1 time. As the life drained from the attacker, the wife pulled out her cell phone and called 911. A spokesperson with the Bernalillo County Sheriff's Office said, quote, "We received a call from someone in the South Valley that they had seen their husband fire at least 1 round at an individual that had assaulted him with a machete," close quote. The Sheriff's Office says it looks like a case of self-defense. At the moment, no charges have been filed and no arrests have been made. The deceased criminal had a criminal history, including a few burglary charges.
Well, I would think the ATM would have a camera also, right? I mean, there would be footage there that they could review.
Oh, yeah.
And they did.
Go ahead.
No, they did. By the way, for those of you who are fighting with your spouse, she's the one talking to the police about what you just did. Make night.
It's good to have a team.
That she needs to know. She needs to know what to say, and she needs to know how to protect your legal rights also. So make sure that that's a conversation you have before you need it.
I want to bring up, in regards to our last DGU, we had a great comment come through. I'm going to go ahead and run this through again. DJ Play Nice, come on. Well, let me try this, and now here we go. DJ Play Nice says, "Can't a suspect just call out, 'Hey Google, hang up,' like shouting 'oust' at a Schultz Hunt trained dog?" Possibly. However, if that 911 call gets placed, they're gonna call you right back. There's no once that call connects, 911 is going to get back with you in most jurisdictions. I don't know about New York City or Portland, Oregon.
Okay, way inside baseball. I don't think you can hang up on 911.
I think you're right. Now that I think about it.
No, I think you can.
You got to go through a step on a cell phone. I have called 911 a few times on my cell phone, mostly for traffic situations.
Sure.
But if I remember right, to hang up when I'm done, you have to turn off emergency mode on your phone after you call 911. So, can you hang up on 911? Yeah. They'll get right back to you, though, unless you turn emergency mode off on your phone.
Well, one of the things that's interesting about this to me is, of these millions of new gun owners, how many of them have ever moved with a firearm in their hand? You're trying to back away from a guy with a machete. You're trying to, by the way, given that your family's in the car, you're not running around behind your family. So, you're not going to use that as the cover to keep a man with a knife away from you. But wow, our defender had enough presence of mind to fire one shot, and then the situation changed. His attacker turned away. He didn't keep. Go, Amanda. There's something here.
Yeah, so one of the statements that just came by was you'd think that there's a closed circuit TV to capture all of this because it's a ATM, and sure there would be, which would be, had you not been armed, it would be able to capture your murder. I mean, with your back to somebody and they have a machete, I mean that is wicked, absolutely wicked. And so yeah, they'll film you. I mean, it's sort of like the Mayhem commercial going, there's a fire over there. There's a fire. I'm not doing anything about it. It's not my job, but there's a fire over there.
And I think what a lot of new gun owners don't realize too is how quickly that situation can happen. How fast you have to recognize it and respond to it, because you have a second and a half to really process that information before a machete is on top of you. So I think that training in those scenarios is really important to understand just how fast someone can approach you.
Amen.
I'd like to point out this, and this is not gun related, it's more safety minded. Who doesn't have a bunch of wham? Some walking around money. Like I can't remember the last time I went to the ATM with all of the stores asking if you want cash back. If I'm going to go to the first store and I don't have cash, but I'm not going to get very many items at the second store. Ask for $20 or $40. They'll take it out of your account. They add it on. They take it out of your account. They give you the cash back. You get $20 to go to the next store. I legit have no idea the last time I went to an ATM.
I could top you. I have never, ever gone to an ATM.
Okay, I'm going to top this.
The other day. Sorry, go ahead, Charlie. Top it.
I may have recently had a birthday, and my son, for my gift, bought me a machete. So I have been to an ATM, and I have a machete.
I got to say, when you started off on that, Charlie, when you said who doesn't have a lot of wham, I thought you were going to start crooning Careless Whispers or something.
God, no.
But I think banks are being more mindful of people carrying cash, because I haven't been to an ATM in a while, but I did recently have to make a withdrawal because we were purchasing a vehicle. And I had to sign a lot of disclaimers and liability waivers that I accepted the risk of carrying a bunch of cash, and that it would not be on the bank if I was followed or jugging or any of those crimes. So it happens, and people need to be aware. I was definitely watching my six the whole time until I could get to the other bank.
I have to tell you guys a story. We were doing a not-for-profit, and we would do these big fundraisers. And when you're at a fundraiser, the end is there's a lot of cash. And so I left this fundraiser with a gun box full of cash, right? And so the next day I had to go to the bank with it. And I swear that Mission Impossible music was playing in my head as I'm walking through the parking lot and headed in there. Exactly. And I beat it there.
Beat it on.
Good. So it was really funny because then they're like, here, you can count it out here. And I was like, you don't want to open this box right here on the counter. We need to go somewhere.
Right, we need to go to a back room. Okay, so a couple of things. John Anderson, I'm not sure if I want to do Last Christmas as a gungram. And G-Webs, if a robber's following you from one store and watching you get cash to go to the next store, you gotta step up your paying attention to surroundings. You know, I don't know. I mean, I certainly don't follow people to stores, but I have noticed. Like people in the little plaza where I do a lot of my shopping, there's a Walmart, there's a Stop and Shop, there's a Michael's. I've noticed people at Walmart and then people at Stop and Shop right afterwards buying more groceries.
Yeah. All right. Well, we are again late on getting out of the segment. Imagine that. This show just kind of went off the rails at minute number 4 and just kind of has never got back on. So let's do this. We got one more segment to come. Let's go aside for our final break. We're going to hear from the Second Amendment Foundation, and we'll shut the show down shortly after that.
America is under attack, and we need you to take action now. Our history, culture, Constitution, and the American way of life are being assaulted. Violent anarchists are rioting and looting in cities across the country. They are demanding the defunding of our police and an end to law and order. There has never been a more critical time to defend our right to keep and bear arms. The Second Amendment Foundation created the Second Amendment First Responders Program. This program seeks to actively engage Americans who want to protect our Second Amendment rights. Please text PROTECT 2A to 474747 and become a Second Amendment First Responder. Now is the time to defend our right to keep and bear arms. Text PROTECT 2A to 474747. Again, text PROTECT 2A to 474747. Now is the time to defend our right to keep and bear arms. Text PROTECT 2A to 474747.
All right, we are back. This is the final segment of the Polite Society podcast, powered by the Firearms Policy. Oh, goodness, it had been a couple weeks since I made that script. Polite Society podcast presented by the Second Amendment Foundation. I want to get a couple. Some of these comments are just are really very cool. We got DJ Plain Ice. Cashiers are crafty though. They sneak away from the register and take off their smocks before they start following you. John Anderson says, gonna have to step up the mall ninja game.
Who's been to a mall? I can't tell you the last time I went to a mall. Maybe I need to get out more. I don't know.
Some people still live in free America. Ask Paul what is, South Dakota never locked down. So there.
No, never once.
Yeah.
There have been a few individual cities that have had some mask mandates. The mask mandate here in Sioux Falls, my hometown, you're mandated to wear a mask. The penalty for not wearing a mask, there isn't one. So, wear a mask. You remember the old, I want to say it was Monty Python routine, stop or I shall say stop again. Yeah, it's wear a mask or we're going to tell you to wear a mask again. That
was Robyn Williams. Talked about England. Yeah.
Oh, yes. Okay. All right. My mistake there. Normally, and this is going to be the last official time I do it, because I'm going to be very honest, I haven't checked that email account in a long time. So today we're putting to bed forever the on-air at politicsandguns.com email address. If you want to comment on the show, those of you who listen to us on podcast, come join us Monday afternoon or evening wherever you happen to live. We go live at 5 p.m. Central Time. We get all kinds of great comments, as evidenced today, and that's so immediate. It's so much better than me getting an email about a show that was from 3 weeks ago, and then I forget to put it into the show notes for another 2 weeks. So come join us live, if you would. Second Amendment Foundation's Facebook page or YouTube channel. And get your comments in while we're live. Rob, what's been going on over at Slowfax, man?
Not a lot. That's why we'd say, John, do you have any blog posts that you want to talk about today?
Actually, I do. The ongoing COVID pandemic strikes again. The NRA is moving their 2021 annual meeting from May until the first weekend in September. They're keeping it in Houston, but are obviously being very cautious. In other news, in as David Cole calls it, San Francisco on the French Broad, otherwise known as Asheville, North Carolina, a newly elected radical on the city council voted against accepting a grant for new bulletproof vests for police officers. Is it any wonder that Asheville has 57 positions open for police officers? That and more is at onlygunsandmoney.com.
All right. One more. This actually is a Facebook comment, and I think it's a great one to address as we're heading out the door. William on Facebook says, listening from the UK before heading back to the US. I've heard all of you on various podcasts and appreciate what you had to say. We are looking for a new hometown. California is horrible, and we have the ability to pick and choose. Where would you suggest we pick to settle down? William, what I'm going to suggest myself, there are 18 states, and I don't know them off the top of my head, and I may be 17 and maybe 16 and maybe 19, but look for a state that has constitutional carry. If states will allow you to defend yourself and trust you with your guns, then they're probably pretty good with all your other freedoms as well. So,
hard to argue with that.
Yeah.
It's a good starting place.
That is. That's a great point.
Let's see here. And one more. Gun website says, I first heard of the NRA moving the show. Yeah, the NRA annual meetings. This is going to screw me up. Normally the NRA annual meetings and the NRA show is in the springtime. April, May, sometime around there. Yeah, no. They've moved it to early. I want to say it's like the first weekend in September in 2020.
Labor Day weekend.
Oh, it's Labor Day weekend?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that just threw another headache into it. All right.
Guess who won't be in Florida? Yep. Yeah.
But, yeah, we've got Gun Rights Policy Conference. I'm going to be having a big part of that. That's in the usually traditionally either the third or fourth week of September. Plus, we've got AmCon, which is in conjunction with Gun Rights Policy Conference. I kind of head that thing up. And there's other things I can't talk about that's coming up in October or November time frame. Adding NRA show into the planning stage for that whole mix, that's gonna bugger me up. So I don't know.
So one of the things that I had heard from the insiders at the NRA was the fact that they were very concerned that the Houston mayor is not necessarily a pro-gun fan to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
And they were very concerned about them using the COVID as an excuse and doing it like 2 days out, 3 days out, something that was non-recoverable. And
Mm-hmm.
they've seen it other places. And so that was, they didn't tell me about the decision. They didn't tell me there was even that, but they were telling me that was the concern. And it makes sense.
Yeah. All right. Well, we are right now, and real quickly, gun websites, screwing with GRPC too. GRPC is still going to happen. That we had to, and nobody, we had to shut it down for 2020. Vaccines are coming out. The herd immunity is coming. I honestly believe we're going to be back to a normal lifestyle by September. So, but there is some stuff coming that is not GRPC that is equally exciting, and stay tuned for that in the next few months. But we are now threatening on going over 90 minutes. Big shock! So, I think we're going to go ahead and set this one aside here. Everybody, if you're on Facebook, check out the Facebook listeners group. Just search Polite Society Podcast. Listeners, that does wrap it up with another episode of the Second Amendment Foundation's Polite Society Podcast. I'd like to thank Dean Reick for joining us today. So for Amy, Dana, Tracy, John, Susan, Amanda, Robyn, Charlie, and Rob.
Until next time.
Stay safe.
Be aware.
And we'll see you down the road.
The views and opinions on the show you just heard are those of the host and the guest and are not necessarily the views of any sponsors or other affiliations. But hey, not everyone is as smart as we are.
Okay, we are clear of recording. Everybody watching, thank you. We will see